Okay, hi, Michael Wilson Barber here, and you can see my fake Fender Strat in the background. It's a Squier. We are not sponsored by Squier. We are sponsored by Skooka Merch, by some t-shirts. I'm close to launching my website, but I'm also on YouTube and Facebook. So today is a movie review. This, I think, is my first movie review that I've ever done, and of course there's lots of movie reviews that you can do, but I'm going to review The Dollmaker, starring Jane Fonda, from 1984, released May 13th, 1984, and I didn't watch this movie because Jane Fonda's in it. Please do not leave comments about Jane Fonda or anything like that. It's really not about her. It's a movie. I'd say most importantly, Levon Helm stars in this movie as Jane Fonda's husband. Levon Helm, as most of you will know, was one of the singers for the band, and he was the drummer, and he played the song The Weight, sang the Weight, and Up on Cripple Creek, and some great songs like that. Levon Helm was from Arkansas, so when he plays in movies, he played in Coal Miner's Daughter as Loretta Lynn's daddy, and he played in some other movies, but he does have a southern accent. I don't know if it passes for a Kentucky accent. This family in this movie is from rural Kentucky, like rural Kentucky, not a city or a town, but really out in rural areas. I forget which county or which town that they said this was in. It was based on a book written first. In the 80s, there were a lot of made-for-TV movies like this that were based on a book first. But Levon Helm did a great job, and I would say Jane Fonda did a wonderful job. I don't know if her Kentucky accent passes for rural Kentucky of the 1940s, but she did great. She won an Emmy for this movie, and this movie was nominated for 2 Golden Globes. It was nominated for a bunch of other stuff. By the way, the music in this movie, it says, was done by John Rubinstein, and I do not know who that is, but there's this woman singer who sings a lot of the folk songs in this movie, including especially I Am a Pilgrim, which is a pretty famous sort of gospel bluegrass song. So I Am a Pilgrim is featured prominently in this movie. Okay, so for the movie review, The Dollmaker 1984, for those of you who don't like spoilers, I am going to give away a few things in the movie. I won't tell you everything about the movie. The reason I bought this movie on DVD on eBay was because my mother unfortunately has passed, but my mother and I watched this movie at least on one occasion, maybe more than one occasion. If you lived through the 1980s, you will remember that they would do movies and they would replay them. They would buy the rights to a movie and play it like once a year. This was before cable really came out. Made-for-TV movies were the same way. If there was a made-for-TV movie, it would often get replayed. So this movie, I remember watching with my mom, and I do remember it being sad, but there is redemption at the end for those of you who like a redemptive story. I think most of us do. The gist of the movie is Gertie is a mother in rural Kentucky, and it's 1944, and she likes to whittle and make dolls and baskets and stuff like that as a hobby. And her husband, Levon Helm, his name in the movie is Clovis. Jane Fonda's name is Gertie. She has 5 children. There's some real family drama living in a rural area. They're not near a hospital. I will tell you this, their youngest son is sick for some reason, and she has to give him an emergency tracheostomy before taking him to the hospital, like at 20 miles away or 20 minutes away, I can't remember. But she saves her son. Anyway, the family wants to stay in rural Kentucky. They don't have a lot of money. There's not a lot of ways to make money. I think they're farmer or subsistence farmers. It's 1944, so the husband Clovis joins the army, I think it is, and he's going to go and serve in the war, but he's only in the army for a short time, or they don't take him or something like that, and he ends up in Detroit as, I believe, an auto worker or a factory worker. He's a factory worker, and he's in a union and all that stuff. And then they're on the company dole, and they owe a lot of money, and they buy a car, and they owe car payments, and they're just actually going into debt. They're making money, but all the money is going out, and they're in debt. And the family's pretty unhappy, especially Gertie. And the oldest son is so unhappy that he actually runs away and goes back home to Kentucky to live with his grandparents. And Gertie's skills at whittling and making baskets gets noticed by one of the school teachers. I think it's the principal, actually. And she realizes she can start selling crafts for money in Detroit. And she has saved a lot of money. She was hoping her family could buy some land and buy a farm. And she's been saving money for years and kind of squirreling it away. Anyway, long and short of it is, there's a very sad scene in this movie that their youngest daughter gets killed playing on train tracks. It's terrible. I cried and cried and cried. It's so sad. I had to stop the movie and finish it the next day. And this could be why I don't remember this movie being played a lot, replayed on air, even though it won a lot of awards. But the scene of the young daughter getting killed with the train tracks is just traumatic and sad. And at this point, Gertie wants to go back home to Kentucky and get out of Detroit. And the husband, Clovis, I think, has realized as well the mistake of moving to the city. A lot of people did that back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s probably. From rural areas, white people, African American people moving to Chicago and Detroit and other northern cities looking for a better life, and didn't necessarily have that. Clovis is having problems with the union, I think, goes on strike, and he has to run away. And anyway, there's redemption. The Dollmaker, Gertie, has a piece of cherry wood from back home, and she cuts it up into little pieces and makes a bunch of little wooden carvings and sells them. And they sell the car and pay off the car that they were owning and buy a truck. And like the last scene is like they're moving back home. So there's a lot of sadness in this movie, but there's redemption. And because of the Dollmaker, Gertie, she in a way kind of saves her family, or God shows grace to their family through her, and they get to move back home to Kentucky and move out of Detroit. So anyway, if you remember this movie, like and subscribe, click the link below whether you remember it or not. If you know the song I Am a Pilgrim, recall Graham Parsons and the Byrds covered this song on Sweetheart of the Rodeo. And Levon Helm, of course, stars as Gertie's husband, Clovis, who you'll remember from the band. Remember Bob Dylan's band, who went solo and became the band? Anyway, Levon Helm's in the movie. So good movie. Only watch it if you have a box of Kleenex nearby, because it is sad. And otherwise, there you go, The Dollmaker, 1984, made-for-TV movie. God bless. Goodbye.